Get out of that seat. It's for VIPs, not the help." That's what Captain Greg Thorne told the woman sitting in 1A on his private jet, moments before takeoff on Christmas Eve. He thought he could bully her. He thought she was just a nobody getting a charity ride. He was wrong, dead wrong, because the woman he was screaming at wasn't just a passenger. She was Nia Sterling, the billionaire who had just bought the entire aviation company that morning, and she was about to give Captain Thorne a Christmas bonus he would never forget. Buckle up. This karma hits harder than a crash landing. The snow was falling in thick, heavy sheets over Teterboro Airport, TEB, in New Jersey, turning the exclusive tarmac into a world of white silence. Teterboro was the playground of the elite, the gateway for Wall Street titans and Hollywood royalty to slip in and out of New York City without the hassle of the common crowds at JFK or Newark. Nia Sterling pulled the collar of her beige cashmere coat tighter around her neck as she stepped out of the black SUV. She didn't look like a titan of industry today. She wore no jewelry, her makeup was minimal, and her hair was pulled back in a simple, practical bun. She carried a single, worn leather tote bag that looked like it had seen better days. To the untrained eye, she looked like an assistant, or perhaps a nanny, sent ahead to prep the plane for a wealthy family. That was exactly the point. Nia took a deep breath, the icy air filling her lungs. It was December 24th, Christmas Eve. Most people were home with families, wrapping gifts or preparing feasts. Nia was here to work, or rather, to inspect. Just 10 hours ago, her holding company, Sterling Onyx, had finalized the acquisition of Velocity Private Aviation, a boutique charter company known for its fleet of ultra-long-range jets. The deal had been closed quietly, the ink barely dry. The staff at Velocity knew the company had been sold, but they didn't know who the new owner was. They certainly didn't know she was a 32-year-old black woman who had built her fortune in tech logistics before pivoting to aerospace. "Ms. Sterling?" her driver, Marcus, asked softly, holding the umbrella over her head. "Are you sure you don't want me to announce you? They'll roll out the red carpet." Nia smiled, a mischievous glint in her dark eyes. "No red carpets today, Marcus. If they treat the help with dignity, then I know my money is safe. If they don't, well, I need to know that, too." She walked toward the FBO, fixed base operator, entrance. She was booked on flight VPA 808, a charter bound for London Heathrow. It was an empty-leg flight, a repositioning flight that was technically supposed to be empty, but as the owner, she had scheduled herself on it to get to London for a Boxing Day meeting. Inside the private terminal, the atmosphere was warm and smelled of expensive espresso and leather. A few pilots were milling about, checking weather reports on their iPads. Nia approached the desk. The young woman behind the counter, whose name tag read Jessica, barely looked up from her phone. "Excuse me," Nia said softly. "I'm checking in for the flight to London. Tail number N700VA. Jessica sighed, tapping a long acrylic nail against the granite countertop. She looked Nia up and down, her eyes lingering on the worn tote bag. "The crew flight. Are you the catering staff?" "I'm a passenger," Nia corrected her, keeping her voice even. "Nia Sterling." Jessica typed lazily into the computer. "I don't see a... Oh, wait. Here it is. Pax count. 1. You're the only passenger." She raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical that someone looking so modest could afford a $60,000 one-way charter. "Payment status says internal transfer. Must be nice knowing someone in corporate." "Something like that," Nia said. "Well, the plane is being prepped," Jessica said, waving a hand dismissively toward the glass doors. "Captain Thorne is already out there. You can walk yourself out. We're short-staffed because of the holiday." Naya blinked. At a luxury private terminal, passengers were never told to walk themselves out to the jet, especially in the snow. They were driven to the stairs in a heated Mercedes or Cadillac. "Walk?" Naya asked. "It's just 50 yards, honey. Unless you want to wait 20 minutes for the van driver to finish his lunch." Jessica went back to her phone. Naya tightened her jaw. Strike one, she thought. She turned and headed for the glass doors. Outside, the wind was biting. Naya trudged through the slush, the snow instantly soaking into her boots. Ahead of her sat the crown jewel of the fleet, a Bombardier Global 7500. It was a magnificent machine, capable of flying 7,700 nautical miles non-stop. Its sleek white fuselage gleamed under the floodlights, the gold stripe of Velocity Aviation running down the side. She reached the mobile stairs. There was no flight attendant waiting at the bottom to greet her. No hot towel, no smile, just the roar of the Auxiliary Power Unit, APU, and the biting wind. She climbed the stairs, her heart pounding, not from the cold, but from the rising tension of what she might find inside. Nia stepped into the cabin, shaking the snow off her coat. The interior of the Global 7500 was breathtaking. It was divided into 4 living spaces: a club suite, a conference suite, an entertainment suite, and a master bedroom at the back with a full shower. The leather was cream-colored, the wood veneer a deep, rich mahogany. However, the atmosphere was far from professional. Loud laughter boomed from the cockpit. The flight deck door was wide open. Nia walked into the galley, expecting to see a flight attendant. Instead, she found the galley messy, with coffee cups scattered on the counter and a half-eaten sandwich on a silver tray. "Hello?" Nia called out. A blonde flight attendant popped her head out from the cockpit, looking flushed. Her lipstick was slightly smeared. She looked at Nia, confused. "Who are you?" "I'm Naya, the passenger for London." The flight attendant, whose name tag read Tiffany, frowned. "Passenger? Greg said this was a ghost leg. We weren't supposed to have anyone until the return trip." A man's voice boomed from the cockpit. "What's the hold-up, Tiff? I need that coffee before we push back." Captain Greg Thorne stepped out of the flight deck. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with the classic pilot look, jaw square, hair perfectly coiffed with a touch of grey at the temples. He wore his uniform with an air of arrogant authority, the 4 gold stripes on his epaulets glinting in the cabin lights. He stopped when he saw Nia. His blue eyes swept over her, taking in the wet boots, the lack of jewelry, and the simple coat. He didn't see a billionaire. He saw an inconvenience. He saw an intruder. "Who the hell are you?" Thorne barked, not bothering to lower his voice. "I'm Nia Sterling," she repeated, maintaining her composure despite the rudeness. "I'm booked on this flight to London." Thorne scoffed, a short, sharp sound of derision. He grabbed a manifest from the counter and scanned it. Sterling. Barely says anything here, just corporate packs. Look, lady, I don't know who you slept with in HR to get a free ride on a $70 million jet, but you picked a bad day." Nia felt a cold heat rise in her chest. "Excuse me? I paid for this flight, and even if I hadn't, I am the passenger listed on your manifest. Is this how you greet your clients?" Thorne stepped closer, looming over her. He was used to intimidating people. He was the captain. On this plane, he was God. "I greet clients with respect. I greet freeloaders however I want. This is a repositioning flight. It's supposed to be empty. Me and Tiffany here had plans for the cabin." He glanced at Tiffany, who giggled nervously and leaned against the bulkhead. The implication was disgusting and unprofessional. They had planned to treat the owner's jet like a flying motel room. "Your plans are irrelevant, Captain," Nia said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming steelier. "I suggest you prepare for takeoff. I'll be sitting in the master suite." Nia moved to walk past him toward the rear of the plane, where the bedroom was located. She wanted to separate herself from this toxicity immediately. "Whoa, hold your horses," Thorne said, stepping in front of her and blocking the aisle. He put a hand on her shoulder, a massive violation of protocol. Nia flinched and brushed his hand away. "Do not touch me." "You don't go to the master suite," Thorne sneered. "That bedroom is sealed. We just had it detailed for the real clients we're picking up in London. You're not messing up the Egyptian cotton sheets with your street clothes." "My street clothes?" Nia asked, incredulous. "You heard me. You look like you just walked off the subway," Thorne said, looking at her wet boots with disgust. "If you're flying, you sit in the jump seat in the galley, or maybe the crew rest area. But you're not entering the main cabin." Nia stared at him. It was almost impressive how digging his own grave seemed to be his favorite hobby. "Let me get this straight, Captain Thorne. You are denying a manifest passenger access to the cabin seats on a private charter?" "It's my plane, my rules," Thorne declared, puffing out his chest. "I'm the pilot in command. I decide who sits where for safety and security. And frankly, having someone like you wandering around the cabin is a security risk. I don't know what you might steal." The silence that followed was deafening. The racism wasn't even veiled anymore. It was out in the open, ugly and raw. Tiffany looked away, pretending to busy herself with the coffee machine, but she didn't intervene. Nia reached into her tote bag. Thorne flinched, as if she were pulling a weapon. She pulled out her phone. "I'm going to make a call," Nia said calmly. "No phones during pre-flight checks," Thorne snapped. "Put it away or I'm kicking you off." "We are at the gate, the door is open, and the engines are off," Nia countered, her knowledge of aviation protocols catching him off guard for a split second. "I am making a call." "You listen to me," Thorne growled, his face turning red. "You are not a passenger. You are cargo. You're a favor. Now, I have a VIP guest coming on board in 5 minutes, my fiancée. She's flying with us to London for Christmas. She will be taking the master suite. She will be taking the club suite. You will sit in the crew jump seat, strapped in, and you will not speak, or I will have security drag you off this tarmac for trespassing." Nia paused. "Your fiancée? On a charter flight? Did she pay for a ticket?" Thorne laughed, a cruel barking sound. "I'm the captain. Who's going to check? The owner. The owner is some faceless corporation in a skyscraper in Dubai or something. They don't care what I do as long as I get the bird to London on time." "Is that so?" Nia whispered. "Sit down. Jump seat." "Now," Thorne ordered, pointing a finger at the uncomfortable folding chair next to the lavatory door. "And take off that coat. You're dripping water on my carpet." Nia looked at the jump seat. Then she looked at Thorne. She saw the smug satisfaction in his eyes, the joy of exerting power over a black woman he deemed beneath him. "I will give you one chance to apologize, Captain," Nia said, her voice trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the rage she was suppressing. "One chance to check the manifest again. Look at the name of the holding company that booked this flight." "I don't care if the Pope booked it," Thorne shouted, losing his temper completely. "Get in the seat or get off the plane." Suddenly, movement at the door caught their attention. A woman in a white fur coat, wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying a Louis Vuitton dog carrier, ascended the stairs. She swept into the cabin in a cloud of expensive perfume. "Babe, it is freezing out there," the woman shrieked. She looked at Thorne, then at Tiffany, and finally at Nia. Her face wrinkled in distaste. "Greg, who is this? Why is the cleaning lady still on board? I thought we were going to have champagne before Wheels Up." Thorne's demeanor changed instantly. He put on a sickly sweet smile. "Just handling it, babe. Minor delay with the staffing." He turned back to Nia, his eyes hard as stones. "Last warning. Move!" Nia looked at the woman, the VIP fiancée. Then she looked at Thorne. "No," Nia said. "I don't think I will." Thorne's face went purple. He grabbed his radio from his belt. "Security to flight VPA 808. I have a disruptive passenger refusing crew instructions. Need immediate removal." He clipped the radio back. "You wanted to play the hard way? Fine. Merry Christmas, lady. You're going to jail." Nia didn't move. She just unlocked her phone and tapped the contact labeled CEO. Sterling, Onyx Aviation Legal Team. Yes, she thought. Merry Christmas indeed. The woman in the white fur coat, whose name Nia would soon learn was Candace, did not wait for an answer regarding the cleaning lady. She swept past Nia, her Louis Vuitton dog carrier knocking painfully against Nia's knee as she passed. "Ouch," Nia muttered, steadying herself. Candace didn't even glance back. She made a beeline for the club suite, the section of the plane with 4 large, facing leather armchairs and a fold-out mahogany table. She dropped the carrier onto one of the pristine cream leather seats. "Greg, darling," Candace whined, spinning around. "Why is it so cold in here? You promised it would be tropical. I'm freezing my toes off." Captain Thorne, who had been ready to physically throw Nia off the plane moments ago, instantly softened his posture. He walked past Nia, deliberately bumping her shoulder with his heavy uniformed chest, and approached Candace with a sickeningly affectionate smile. "APU is just warming up, babe. It'll be toasty in 5 minutes," Thorne said, reaching out to stroke her arm. "You sit tight. Tiffany will get you some champagne." Thorne shot a look at Tiffany, the flight attendant. The tension in the cabin spiked. Tiffany stood by the galley counter, her face pale. Nia, watching from the periphery of the galley, realized instantly what was happening. Tiffany wasn't just a flight attendant. The smeared lipstick and the cozy atmosphere earlier suggested she was involved with Thorne. Now, she was being forced to serve the fiancé. Tiffany's jaw tightened, but she forced a tight, professional smile. "Of course, Captain. Champagne coming right up." "And something for Mr. Fluffles," Candace added, unzipping the carrier. A small, trembling Pomeranian hopped out. "Maybe some sparkling water in a saucer. He gets dehydrated." "We don't serve dogs on the seats," Tiffany said, her voice straining. "It ruins the leather." "Excuse me?" Candace snapped, her sunglasses sliding down her nose. She looked at Thorne. "Greg, is she serious? Mr. Fluffles travels better than most people." She cast a pointed, nasty glare at Nia, who was still standing near the entryway, phone in hand. "Certainly better than the help over there." Thorne cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the friction between his 2 worlds. "Tiffany, just get the water. Put a towel down." He turned his attention back to Nia, his face hardening into a mask of rage. "You!" Thorne barked, marching back toward the galley. "Why are you still breathing my air? I told you to sit in the jump seat or get off." Nia didn't back down. She stood near the open door, the snow swirling in behind her. "I was observing, Captain. I see you have an unauthorized passenger and an unauthorized animal. Did Candace clear the TSA checks, or did you just walk her through the hangar gate?" Thorne's eyes bulged. "That is none of your business." "Actually it is," Nia said calmly. "It's a violation of FAA Part 135 regulations to carry manifesting passengers without proper vetting on a charter flight. If the FAA knew you were running an illegal taxi service for your girlfriend while listed as an empty leg, you'd lose your license." The silence in the cabin was absolute. Even Candace looked up, sensing the shift in tone. Thorne stepped into Naya's personal space, so close she could smell the coffee and mint on his breath. "Listen to me, you legal wannabe. You don't quote regulations to me. I am the regulation. Now, I have called security. They are 2 minutes out. If you don't sit in that jump seat and shut your mouth, I will have them drag you across the tarmac face first." "Greg!" Candace called out, sounding bored. "Stop flirting with the trash and come open this bottle. Tiffany is being slow." Thorne pointed a finger in Naya's face. "One word. One single word from you during this flight, and I divert to Newfoundland and dump you in the snow. Sit. Down." Nia looked at the jump seat. It was a humiliating little fold-down chair facing the lavatory, meant for crew use during takeoff and landing, not for a passenger on a 7-hour flight. She sat. She didn't do it because she was scared. She did it because she needed him to commit fully to this course of action. She needed the timestamp on the security footage to show that the plane had pushed back with her in this seat. She needed the evidence to be irrefutable. Thorne smirked, a look of pure, toxic triumph. "Good girl. Now, stay there." He turned his back on her and walked into the club suite. "Sorry about that, babe. Just some corporate mix-up. They send these couriers to save money. She won't bother us." Nia watched as Thorne sat in the passenger seat opposite Candace. Another violation. The pilot was supposed to be in the cockpit, prepping for departure, not drinking champagne with his fiancée while the engines were cold. Tiffany passed Nia, carrying a crystal flute of champagne. She looked down at Nia, her eyes filled with a mix of pity and resentment. "You really shouldn't have argued with him," Tiffany whispered hurriedly. He's got a temper." "I noticed," Nia said coolly. "Does his fiancée know about you, Tiffany?" Tiffany flinched, the champagne flute wobbling on the tray. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do," Nia said. "And I think you know that this flight is going to end very badly for everyone involved if you don't start following protocol." Just stay quiet," Tiffany hissed, glancing at the couple laughing in the plush seats. "He's the chief pilot. He can fire anyone. He can blacklist passengers." "He can try," Nia murmured. Suddenly, the cabin was flooded with flashing blue and red lights reflecting off the snow outside. A siren chirped. Thorne stood up, looking out the porthole. Finally, the cavalry. He looked at Nia with a sadistic grin. "Change of plans, Miss Sterling. I don't want to look at you for 7 hours. The police are here. You're getting off my plane." Thorne marched to the main cabin door and looked down the stairs. 2 Port Authority police vehicles had pulled up alongside the jet, their lights cutting through the snowy twilight. 2 officers, bundled in heavy tactical jackets, were jogging up the mobile stairs. "Captain?" the first officer asked, breathless from the cold. He was a burly man with a red face. "We got a call about a disruptive passenger." "Disruptive is putting it mildly," Thorne said, stepping aside to let the cold air and the officers into the warm cabin. "I have an intruder who refused to deplane, threatened the crew, and claimed to have authority over the aircraft. I need her removed immediately so we can keep our slot." Thorne pointed a damning finger at Nia, who was still sitting calmly in the jump seat, her hands folded in her lap. The officers turned to look at her. They expected a drunk, or perhaps someone screaming. Instead, they saw a composed, well-dressed black woman sitting with perfect posture near the toilet. "Ma'am," the officer said, stepping into the galley, "you need to grab your things and come with us." Nia stood up slowly. "Officers, there seems to be a misunderstanding. I am the authorized passenger for this flight. I have the manifest on my phone." "She's lying," Thorne interjected smoothly. He put on his captain voice, authoritative, calm, reasonable. She's a corporate courier we were doing a favor for, but she became belligerent when we told her she couldn't sit in the master bedroom. She started shouting about how she owns the place. Clearly a mental health issue. I can't have her at 40,000 feet. It's a safety risk. The mental health card. It was a classic move to discredit women, especially women of color, in high-stress situations. Naya saw the officers' demeanor shift. They stopped looking at her as a passenger and started looking at her as a suspect, a risk. "Ma'am, the captain is the final authority on who flies," the officer said, his hand resting near his belt. "If he wants you off, you're off. We can sort out the ticket dispute in the terminal. But right now, you are trespassing on a federal aircraft." "I am not trespassing," Naya said, her voice firm but not shouting. "I purchased Velocity Aviation at 9:00 a.m. this morning. I own this plane. I own the fuel in the wings. And I technically own the uniform Captain Thorne is wearing." Candace, peering over the back of her leather armchair, let out a loud, shrill laugh. "Oh my God, Greg. She thinks she owns the airline. That is rich. Is she on drugs?" Thorne shook his head, looking at the officers with a "see what I have to deal with" expression. "See? Delusional. Grab her, please. We're burning daylight." The officer stepped forward, pulling a pair of zip ties from his vest. "Ma'am, turn around and place your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for criminal trespass and interfering with a flight crew." "Do not touch me," Naya warned, backing up until she hit the galley counter. "Officer, I am asking you to make one phone call before you do this. Call the station manager at the FBO. Ask him who signed the transfer deed for N700 VA today." "We'll make calls at the station," the officer grunted. He grabbed Nia's wrist. His grip was tight, painful. He twisted her arm behind her back. Nia gasped but didn't scream. She locked eyes with Thorne. Thorne was smiling. It was a smile of pure malice. He waved a little bye-bye with his fingers. "Get her out of here," Thorne said. "Wait!" The voice came from the cockpit. It wasn't Tiffany. It was the first officer, co-pilot, a young man named David, who had been silent up until now, doing the pre-flight checks in the cockpit while Thorne played king in the cabin. David squeezed past Tiffany, holding an iPad. He looked terrified. Captain, hold on," David stammered. "What is it, David?" Thorne snapped. "Can't you see we're busy?" I just got an ACARS message," David said, his voice trembling. "From HQ. Ops Center." "So? Tell them we're delayed because of a security incident." "No, sir," David said, looking from the iPad to Nia, his eyes widening in horror. "The message, it's a priority override. It says, 'Greeting to owner on board. Confirming ID for Nia Sterling. All crew to stand down immediately.'" The silence that fell over the cabin was heavier than the snow outside. The officer holding Nia's arm froze. He loosened his grip slightly. "What did you say?" David turned the iPad around. The screen displayed the official flight operations software. A red banner was flashing across the top. "Owner on board, Priority 1. Passenger, Sterling, Air. Status, VVIP." Thorne stared at the screen. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like he was about to faint. His mouth opened, closed, and opened again. That's hacked," Thorne stuttered. "She must have hacked the system." Nia shook her arm free from the stunned police officer. She adjusted her coat, smoothed her hair, and stepped into the center of the galley. She didn't look like a courier anymore. She looked like a billionaire. "Officer," Nia said, her voice cutting through the air like a razor blade. "You can put those zip ties away, unless you plan on using them on the captain for filing a false police report." The officer looked at Thorne, then at the iPad, Then at Naya. He stepped back, raising his hands. I didn't know, Mum. The captain said a lot of things, Naya interrupted. She turned slowly to face Thorne. Thorne was shrinking. The arrogant posture was gone. He looked like a deflated balloon. Candace, sensing the shift, stood up in the back. Greg, what's going on? Who is she? Naya took a step toward Thorne. Captain Thorne, I believe you mentioned something about my plane, my rules. Thorne swallowed hard. Miss Sterling. Honestly, the manifest didn't say. It said Sterling, Naya corrected him. You just didn't think a Sterling could look like me. She reached into a tote bag, the same bag he had mocked, and pulled out a thick envelope. She tossed it onto the galley counter. That is the acquisition contract, Naya said. Now get the hell out of my way. I have a phone call to make to the Chief of Operations, and you, Captain, are going to sit in the jump seat while I do it. The jump seat, Thorne whispered. Sit, Naya commanded. Down. Thorne looked at the officers. They weren't going to help him. He looked at David, the co-pilot, who was studiously looking at his shoes. He looked at Tiffany, who was trembling. Slowly, painfully, Captain Greg Thorne sat in the small, uncomfortable folding chair by the toilet. Naya picked up the cabin handset, PA system. She didn't look at Thorne. She looked straight at the terrified Tiffany. Tiffany, Naya said calmly, please escort the unauthorized passenger and her dog off the aircraft. The police can assist her with her bags. Candace shrieked. You can't kick me off. Greg, do something. Thorne said nothing. He stared at the floor, the realization of what he had done crashing down on him like a collapsing building. Actually, Naya said, pausing, don't kick her off just yet. I want them both to hear this. She dialed a number on the cabin phone. The audio was patched through the cabin speakers. It rang twice. Sterling Onyx Operations. This is Director Vance. A deep voice boomed through the speakers. Vance, this is Nia, she said. I'm on board N700 VA. Miss Sterling, good evening. How is the new bird treating you? The bird is fine, Nia said, her eyes locked on Thorne. The pilot, however, just tried to have me arrested. What? Vance's voice dropped. I need you to open a file, Vance. We're going to have an emergency HR tribunal right here, right now. I want the flight data recorder pulled remotely, and I want the cockpit voice recorder flagged. Understood, Vance said, his voice turning icy. We are listening. Naya hung up the phone. She looked at the two police officers. Gentlemen, she said, you might want to stick around. I have a feeling I'm going to need to press charges, after all. The silence in the cabin of the Global 7500 was heavy, broken only by the hum of the avionics cooling fans and the distant wail of wind outside. Captain Greg Thorne sat in the jump seat, his knees pressed awkwardly against the galley bulkhead. He looked small. The golden stripes on his shoulders, usually a symbol of absolute authority, now seemed like a costume he was wearing for a play that had been cancelled. The two police officers stood by the door, arms crossed, watching the scene with rapt attention. They had gone from enforcers to spectators of a corporate execution. Nia stood at the galley counter, tapping away on the iPad David had handed her. She wasn't just checking emails. She was accessing the Velocity Aviation Central Server via the aircraft's encrypted satellite link. David, Nia said, not looking up. Bring up the flight logs for the last 6 months, specifically the maintenance repositioning flights. David, the young first officer, nodded vigorously. He was eager to distance himself from his captain. Yes, Miss Sterling. Pulling them up on the MFD, multifunction display now. What are you doing? Thorne croaked. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. despite the open door letting in the freezing air. You can't just look at confidential flight data. That's proprietary. I own the company, Greg, Naya said, her voice dangerously soft. There is nothing proprietary from me, and what I'm seeing is very interesting. She turned the iPad around so the police officers could see. Officers, are you familiar with the term ghost flight? Naya asked. The older officer shook his head. No, ma'am. It's when a pilot claims a plane needs to be flown empty to a new location for maintenance or to pick up a client, Naya explained, her eyes boring into Thorne. It costs the company about $8,000 an hour in fuel and crew costs. According to these logs, Captain Thorne has flown 12 maintenance flights to Miami, Aspen, and Napa Valley in the last 4 months. Strangely, there were no maintenance work orders filed at those airports. Naya swiped the screen. A photo appeared, a social media post. It showed Candice, the woman currently shivering in the club suite, posing on the wing of this exact jet with a glass of champagne. The geotag read, Napa Valley, living the high life. The date matched a maintenance flight. He's been using a $70 million corporate asset as his personal taxi, Naya stated flatly. That is theft, grand larceny, to be precise. The fuel costs alone are over $100,000. Candice gasped. She stood up from the leather armchair, clutching her dog. I didn't know. He told me it was a perk. He said he was allowed. Shut up, Candice, Thorne snapped, his voice cracking. No, you shut up, Naya interjected, because we haven't even gotten to the worst part. David, play the CVR. The CVR? David asked, his eyes widening. The cockpit voice recorder. The cabin area microphone buffer, Naya corrected. This aircraft is equipped with a cabin monitor for safety during charter operations. It records the last 2 hours of audio in the galley and cockpit. Play back the audio from 20 minutes before I boarded. Thorne tried to stand up. You can't do that. That's illegal wiretapping. The police officer put a heavy hand on Thorne's shoulder and shoved him back down into the jump seat. Sit down, pal. If it's her plane, she can listen to the radio if she wants. David typed a command into the flight management computer. A moment later, audio began to play over the high-fidelity cabin speakers. It was crystal clear. Audio playback. Thorne's voice. I'm telling you, Tiff, this new owner is just some investment group. They won't know a thing. I'm going to log extra hours on the London trip, claim we had to divert for weather, and spend a night in Paris. Candice wants to go shopping. Tiffany's voice. Greg, that's risky. What if they audit the logs? Thorne's voice. Who? The bean counters. I'm the chief pilot. I approve the logs. Besides, once we get to London, I'm going to swap out the catering order. Charge the company $5,000 for premium caviar service, and just pocket the cash. We've done it a dozen times. Tiffany's voice. I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this sale. Thorne's voice. Relax. These corporate types are idiots. As long as the plane shines, they don't look under the hood. I own this fleet, Tiff. In my head, I own it. The audio cut off. The silence that followed was excruciating. Thorne looked like a man who had just watched his own funeral. He wasn't just rude. He was a criminal. He was systematically embezzling from the company he worked for. Nia looked at the police officers. Officers, I believe that confesses to fraud, embezzlement, and falsifying federal aviation records. Would you agree? The officer nodded slowly, reaching for his handcuffs again. I'd say that's probable cause, ma'am. Wait, Thorne screamed, tears now streaming down his face. Please, Miss Sterling, it was just talk, locker room talk. I never actually pocketed the money. The accounting team is already auditing the catering receipts as we speak, Naya said, glancing at her phone where a message from Director Reynolds, who she had called earlier, had just popped up. Director Reynolds says the math isn't adding up, Greg. You're done. Nia turned to Candace. The woman in the fur coat looked like a trapped animal. And you, Naya said. You're an accomplice. You knowingly flew on stolen flights. I didn't know, Candace shrieked, backing away until she hit the far wall of the cabin. I'm just his girlfriend. I thought he was rich. He told me he owned a share of the company. He lied, Naya said. Men like him always do. Nia picked up the cabin handset again. David, get Director Reynolds on the video link. I want the entire board to witness what happens next. David set up the iPad on the galley counter, propping it up so the camera faced the cabin. He connected to the corporate Zoom line. A moment later, the screen flickered to life. A grid of faces appeared, the board of directors for Sterling's Onyx, and in the center, Director Reynolds, the head of operations. Ms. Sterling, Reynolds said, his voice crisp and serious. We are all here. The legal team is recording. Thank you, Reynolds, Nia said, stepping into the frame. She made sure the camera captured everything, the luxury of the jet, the police officers, and the pathetic figure of Captain Thorne slumped in the jump seat. This is an emergency termination hearing for Captain Gregory Thorne, Nia announced. Employee ID 4920. Miss Sterling, please, Thorne whimpered. I have a mortgage. I have kids. You should have thought about them before you treated a passenger like garbage because of the color of her skin and the coat she was wearing, Nia said, her voice devoid of sympathy. And you certainly should have thought about them before you stole from this company. She turned to the camera. Director Reynolds, you heard the audio? We did, Reynolds confirmed. It has been saved to the secure server. Good. I am enacting the gross misconduct clause of his contract immediately, Nia declared. Captain Thorne is relieved of command effective 00:00 hours today. He is banned from all Sterling Onyx properties and aircraft. Furthermore, we are pressing full criminal charges for the theft of flight hours and fuel. Agreed, the board members murmured in unison. David, Nia said, turning to the first officer, you are now acting captain of this vessel. Do you accept command? David straightened his spine. He looked at Thorne, his former mentor, now his cautionary tale, and then at Nia. I accept command, Ms. Sterling. Good. Your first order of business, Nia said, pointing to Thorne, is to remove that uniform. He is no longer authorized to wear the insignia of this airline. It was the ultimate humiliation. In the aviation world, the epaulets, the stripes on the shoulders, were everything. They were the symbol of rank, experience, and respect. David hesitated for a second, then stepped forward. Thorne didn't fight. He was too broken. With trembling hands, David reached out and unbuttoned the epaulets from Thorne's shoulders. He pulled off the 4 gold stripes. Thorne slumped, sobbing openly now. He looked like a child. Officers, Nia said. He's all yours. The police hauled Thorne to his feet. He couldn't even walk straight. His legs had turned to jelly. They cuffed his hands behind his back, the metal clicking loudly in the quiet cabin. Move it, the officer growled, pushing Thorne toward the door. As Thorne was dragged past Nia, he looked up at her one last time. His eyes were red, filled with regret and fear. I really am sorry. I know you are, Nia said softly. But you're only sorry because I turned out to be the billionaire. If I had been a nanny or an assistant, you would have thrown me into the snow and laughed about it. That is why you are dangerous, Greg. Goodbye. They dragged him down the stairs and into the back of the waiting police cruiser. The flashing lights painted the snow red and blue. Inside the cabin, only Candace, Tiffany, David, and Naya remained. Candace cleared her throat. She took off her sunglasses, revealing perfectly applied makeup that couldn't hide the terror in her eyes. She tried to smile, a shaky, ingratiating smile. "So," Candace said, her voice high and pitchy. "Ms. Sterling, was it? Wow, what a misunderstanding, right? Greg was such a jerk. I had no idea. You know, us girls have to stick together against guys like that." She took a step toward the club suite seats. "Since we're both going to London, maybe we can start over. I can give you some fashion tips. My treat?" Naya stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. Candace actually thought she could charm her way into staying on the flight. "Candace," Naya said. "Yes?" Candace asked, hopeful. "Get your dog." Candace's smile faltered. "What?" "Get your dog and get off my plane." But it's Christmas Eve," Candace wailed. "There are no commercial flights. How am I supposed to get to London? My luggage is already loaded." "Director Reynolds," Nia said to the iPad, "is the ground crew listening?" "Yes, ma'am," Reynolds replied. "Have the ground crew unload the unauthorized luggage immediately. Leave it on the tarmac." "On it." Nia turned back to Candace. "You called me the help. You called me trash. You watched your boyfriend try to have me arrested, and you laughed. You are not going to London. You are going to New Jersey, and you can walk to the terminal." "You can't do this!" Candace screamed, grabbing her dog carrier. "Do you know who my father is?" "No," Naya said, checking her watch. "And I don't care. Tiffany?" Tiffany jumped. "Yes, Ms. Sterling. Escort her out. If she refuses, call the officers back." Tiffany didn't hesitate this time. She walked up to Candace. "Let's go, Mum. Now." Candace stomped her foot, screamed a curse word that echoed through the cabin, and stormed out, her white fur coat trailing behind her. She disappeared down the stairs into the biting cold and the slush. Nia watched her go. Then she turned to the iPad and the board members. "Gentlemen, ladies," Nia said, "apologies for the delay. We had some baggage to unload. We will be departing for London shortly. I expect a full audit of the fleet on my desk by Monday." "Understood, Ms. Sterling," Reynolds said. "And Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Reynolds." She ended the call. The cabin was quiet, just the hum of the systems. Tiffany stood by the door looking terrified. She was the last loose end. She had been Thorne's accomplice, even if she was reluctant. She knew her job was on the line. Naya sat down in the seat she had originally wanted. 1A. She sighed, the adrenaline finally fading, leaving her exhausted. "Tiffany," Nia said. "I'm packing my things," Tiffany whispered, tears welling up. "I know I'm fired. I'm sorry I didn't stand up to him earlier. I was scared." Naya looked at the young woman. She saw the fear, but she also saw that Tiffany had tried, in her own weak way, to warn her. She hadn't been malicious, just cowardly. "Do you love this job, Tiffany?" Nia asked. Tiffany blinked. "What? Do you love flying?" "Yes," Tiffany said, wiping her eyes. "It's all I've ever wanted to do." Nia looked out the window. The police car was driving away with Thorne. Candace was standing by her pile of Louis Vuitton bags on the wet tarmac, furiously typing on her phone, looking miserable. "You're not fired, Tiffany," Naya said. Tiffany's jaw dropped. I'm not?" "No. But you are on probation," Naya said sternly. "You saw something wrong today, and you hesitated. Next time, if you see injustice on my airline, you speak up, even if it's the captain, even if it's me. Do you understand?" "Yes," Tiffany breathed, nodding rapidly. "Yes, Ms. Sterling. Thank you. Thank you so much." "Good," Naya said. She kicked off her wet boots and leaned back into the soft leather. "Now, Captain David, David poked his head out of the cockpit. Yes, Ms. Sterling. Are we cleared for takeoff? Yes, ma'am. Flight plan is filed. We are ready when you are. Nia smiled. It was a real smile this time. Then let's fly. I believe I have a meeting in London. The Global 7500 climbed smoothly through 30,000 feet, leaving the snowstorm and the drama of Teterboro far below. Above the clouds, the moon was full and bright, illuminating the silver wings of the jet. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere had transformed. It was no longer a battleground. It was a sanctuary. The smell of fresh coffee and warmed croissants replaced the tension. Nia sat in seat 1A, the seat she had been denied. She wasn't working. She was simply looking out the window, watching the stars. Tiffany approached cautiously, holding a silver tray. Ms. Sterling, I found the good champagne. The one the former captain, was hiding in the crew storage. Nia turned and smiled. Thank you, Tiffany. Pour a glass for yourself, too. It's Christmas Eve, after all. Oh, I couldn't, ma'am. Regulations, Tiffany said, though she looked touched by the offer. Right. Good answer, Nia said, taking the flute. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, Tiffany echoed softly. The fallout. While Nia flew across the Atlantic in luxury, down on the ground, Captain Greg Thorne's life was dismantling itself with terrifying speed. Thorne spent Christmas Eve not in a luxury suite in London, and not even in his own warm bed. He spent it in a holding cell at the Bergen County Jail. The charges were severe: grand larceny for the theft of fuel and flight hours, falsifying business records, and filing a false police report. Because it was a holiday, no judge was available for an arraignment until the morning of December 26th. Thorne sat on a cold metal bench, wearing his wrinkled uniform pants, but stripped of his belt, shoelaces, and the prestigious jacket he had worn like armor. He used his one phone call to call Candace. "Babe," Thorne whispered into the receiver, his voice shaking. "You gotta bail me out. Call my lawyer." There was a pause on the other end. Then, a cold, unfamiliar voice. "This is Candace's mother. Candace is currently deleting every photo of you from her Instagram. She says you're a fraud and a thief. Do not call this number again." The line went dead. Thorne dropped the receiver. He put his head in his hands and wept. He had lost his job, his reputation, his fiancée, and his freedom in the span of 1 hour. And the worst part? He knew he deserved it. Nia had hoped to keep the incident relatively quiet within the company, but the world had other plans. A ramp agent at the FBO, who had been de-icing a nearby plane, had witnessed the entire altercation on the stairs. He had filmed Candace screaming about her father and Thorne being dragged away in handcuffs. He uploaded the video to TikTok on Christmas morning with the caption, "Pilot tries to kick billionaire owner off her own plane. Karma is real." Moscow fired airport drama. By the time Nia landed at Heathrow, the video had 15 million views. The internet exploded. The comment sections were a mix of outrage at Thorne's racism and arrogance, and pure jubilation at Nia's calm, calculated takedown. Aviation Geek 99. I flew with Thorne once. Guy was a nightmare. Glad he finally crashed and burned. Justice served. The way she sat in the jump seat just to let him dig his own grave. Masterclass. Business Insider. Who is Nia Sterling? Meet the tech mogul shaking up the private aviation world. The snow had melted, and spring was breaking over New York. Velocity Aviation was no more. Nia had rebranded the company as Onyx Air. The gold stripes on the planes were repainted to a sleek, matte black, but the changes went deeper than paint. Nia fired the entire executive leadership team that had allowed Thorne's corruption to go unchecked. She implemented a new blind hiring policy for pilots to combat bias, and promoted David, the young first officer who had handed her the iPad, to chief pilot of the fleet. David was thriving. Under his leadership, the crew morale soared. They knew that if they did their jobs well, they would be respected, regardless of who they were. As for Greg Thorne, the legal battle had drained his savings. He avoided jail time by taking a plea deal that involved massive restitution payments to the company and the permanent surrender of his pilot's license. The FAA revoked his medical clearance and his ATP certificate. He would never fly a plane again. Not even a Cessna. Nia saw him one last time. She was walking through the main terminal of Newark Airport, catching a commercial flight to visit her parents in Chicago. She liked to fly commercial sometimes, just to stay grounded. She stopped at a kiosk to buy a magazine. A man in a blue vest was mopping the floor nearby. He looked older, grayer, and tired. He was pushing a yellow bucket, his eyes fixed on the linoleum. It was Thorne. He looked up and their eyes met. For a second, Nia thought he might say something, might scream or beg or curse her. But he didn't. He just looked at her with a profound, hollow sadness. He nodded, once, a gesture of surrender, and looked back down at his mop. He was finally doing the job he had accused her of doing. He was the help. Nia didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She just adjusted her bag, turned, and walked toward the first-class lounge. She had an airline to run. And that is the story of how Captain Greg Thorne learned the most expensive lesson of his life. Never judge a book by its cover, and never assume the quiet woman in the corner isn't the one signing your paycheck. He thought he was the king of the sky, but he forgot that kings can be dethroned in a heartbeat. Nia Sterling didn't just buy a plane that Christmas Eve, she bought justice. If you enjoyed this story of high-altitude karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a new story. Question of the day. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who later regretted it? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.